All right. So
Make sure Cody's got you started.
yes. Oh yeah, he does.
Yes, we're ready to go.
Thank you, Cody. All right, let's call the meeting to order. And Teresa, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Whitehall,
Here.
Dr. Wilson, present. Ms. Reese, here. Ms. Steph. Ms. Shonda Meyer,
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi.
She's here.
She's there, Tucker. Ms. Lamunion, I'm sorry. Corey. Mr. Lazio,
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Cook,
Here.
Ms. Virgo, here. Mr. Dees. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, for those who wish, we can recite the pledge. Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible. Thank you. We're going to take our seats. When we started doing this, there was a thought about having the pledge and then a benediction and reflection. Instead of a benediction, I just like to offer not a reflection, but commend for us for, if we wish, to read what I found really quite intriguing was the statement for the American Library Council. It talked about economic empowerment, a great deal of other amazingly positive things that are accomplished through libraries. And I found that to be quite giving the start for noticing what can be done by gathering. So I just recommend that strongly for those who have the time to just take a peek at the. Okay, next matter is for the approval of the agenda. If we have a motion for that, please.
Move approval.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? Okay, it's passed. Next matter is approving the consent agenda, which consists of the meetings of the previous meeting, expenses. And do we have a motion on that, please?
Move approval.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Second that we approve our consent agenda. Any discussion? And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Or abstaining? Great. And I believe we have a visit, Mr. Mr. Cover?
Yes,
Okay.
okay, cool, thank you. I don't have a particular agenda item I'm addressing. I do have 3 points though. Well, first of all, I want to commend you all for being voluntary board members. Appreciate that. You put a lot of time and energy into your work. My 3 points are, first point is, I think this board, some of its members has crossed the line into some really immoral, unethical activities. So that's my first point. And I think that some of you have been swayed in those directions. And with that point, I think there's always a chance for redemption among people. So that's point number one. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Point number two is, last time I was here, a religious prayer of a particular type of Christianity was said. I have to tell you, I think this board and some of its members have crossed a line in terms of pushing religious beliefs in this meeting and its policies. And I have to tell you, if there's another prayer, if I'm aware of that, I'm going to talk with the ACLU. Maybe it's acceptable. It seems to be a taxpayer-funded place. I think inclusivity is important here. Not everybody here is a religious member. Some people are secular, some people are atheists, some people are Muslims, some people are particular types of Christians. Some people, I'm a Jew. My best friend is a Methodist minister in Michigan. My wife was raised as a Methodist. Point is, this is supposed to be a place of inclusivity. And when particular religious beliefs are pushed, either in these council chambers, committee chambers, or in policies, that's inappropriate and possibly against the law. So I'm asking for people to take a step back and look at what they're doing. I also wonder, frankly, for this board, if you've examined your conflict of interest policies lately. Because I happen to believe that there's a possibility that there's some conflict of interest among board members. My example is obviously regarding the levy and tax cutting, which I guess I've gotten, I don't know, inflation keeps going a little bit. Maybe I got my money to buy my my potato chips, my $5 refund. Many people in my county, in Platte County, maybe in Clay County, maybe in Jackson County on the board, are involved in the land business. They have spouses that are in the land business, maybe themselves are in the land business. Growing up north, we're growing big time. And I'd like to see the board re-examine its conflict of interest policies and see if any board members have violated them. Then I'm wondering what you will do. Remember, I think many of you do a great job. I've always appreciated our library. It is a jewel. But when I moved up to Platte County and started coming to these meetings, the jewel seems to be getting a tarnish. We at one point were supposedly fiscally sound. We knew we were entering into a period of increased inflation. We knew that there would be uncertainty, and we are still on a course of trying to cut the levy. It's outrageous, and people are somehow benefiting from that. My last thing I want to say is, Aaron, welcome. Thank you. My mom is from Willoughby, Ohio, and I have some relatives with your last name, so I would like to talk to you afterwards and see if you're related.
All the Masons are from Alabama, but.
All right, well. Anyways,
It's nice to meet
I would like you to re-examine yourselves and where you stand. Does this board have a policy to vote a censure on members? Ron, I'm asking that. Does this board?
Okay,
I'll back off from that.
no, I just want to mention that it's really not proper for a response, because that technically means it would be addressing a topic which is not on the agenda. If we don't have it on the agenda, then we're on hot water because it's not in compliance with the open meeting laws. But certainly responses could be made later on, either through correspondence or something like that. Absolutely.
Will do.
Sure.
Will do. I just hope that we continue to grow as a system. And I don't think we can grow if there's shenanigans happening. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there awards or recognitions?
Yes and no. Let's see here. Okay. Jennifer, was this the award and recognition part?
No, Karen, we don't have any for awards and recognition. Your portion is in the librarian's report.
And just so everyone's aware, there is an award in
What is-
our librarian's report,
Yes.
which is why I was thrown a little bit off.
Yes.
Save that for later.
Yes.
Okay, then on to our finance director's report.
Okay, thank you. On the screen, you can see total amount of tax revenue we have received by the end of January. The amount we received from all three counties is about $55.5 million, which is very close to last year's number. And by the end of January, we have received 90% of budgeted tax revenues. The operating revenue is about $49.7 million, a little higher than last year's. Next page is the operating expenditures. The payroll and benefits is about $19.1 million, 56% of the budget. Library materials is about $6.8 million, 60% of the budget. The other operational accounts is about $5.3 million, 50% of the budget. Next page is the debt service fund. During the month, transferred, we recorded a $6.58 million from tax revenue to the debt service fund. That amount will be used to make the second payment of the debt service fund. So far, we only made one interest payment, $1.4 million, back in August last year. The second payment in February will be about $5.2 million. The next page is that's a new format of my capital project fund presentation. I added a new column to the last month's report. On the far right in red, that's the budget, current year's budget for the capital project fund. And sorry, we did not have a budget for each project. Only had a total amount $19.8 million for the capital plan. There are two sections for capital project funds. The top one is the other capital expenditures, which has about three line items: reading rocket, security camera, and storage center. The middle one, security cameras, has been completed, and we spent about $69,754. The budget is $77,000. The second section of the capital project fund is for all the capital improvement plan. I have a list of all the projects we spend the money for it for the whole fiscal, for current fiscal year. The middle column is the total spending from July 1, 2022 to December 2022. And the third column is the spending for spending in January 2023. Those projects in blue are the unfinished projects. Everything else, technically, the rest of the projects are the finished ones. By the end of January 31st, we spent about $8.9 million for those projects. And the total amount of the expenditure for the whole capital project fund is a little over $9 million at the end of January. Next page is the health insurance fund. Total amount of contribution, $2.2 million. We had close to $700,000 for the administration fee and the reinsurance. And the medical claims is about $1.4 million, leaving a small surplus about $63,607. We had about $1.7 million cash in on hand at the end of January. And the fund balance, fund reserve is about $1.3 million. Also at the bottom, I have the minimum fund balance required and the maximum allowed as of December 2022. So that's my report for the month.
Any questions? Quan, I just have one question. Do you possibly know when the Reading Rocket's going to be finally literally up and running?
We made the total amount is about $350,000.
Yeah.
We made a half, 50% payment in June 2022, and we are going to make another 25% payment soon. I'm not sure about the delivery date.
I mean, they're saying December of this year, which is within the timelines in the agreement.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Quan. Okay, let's go on to the unfinished business committee reports to the Finance Committee.
Okay, you have in front of you in printed version of the Orvis report. It's also online if you want an electronic version. Renee Larson, I think, is online, or she will be in a minute here.
I am here.
All right, thank you. Renee is a senior managing consultant. She at Forvis, she ran the project along with Jacob Holman, partner, and they presented this. First of all, they reviewed it with management. Comments were returned. It was then presented to the Finance Committee at the February meeting. We had a very extensive discussion about it. So if you want to see the details, go back and review that. And at this point, they've made a few changes to the report, and so you have what I think is the final version of the report. You also have in front of you a staff response that's on board docs as well. We're not going to go through that tonight. I just want to give you a heads up that is out there. So with that, Renee's going to just give us some highlights. We're not going to go through the report page by page or point by point. So she's going to go through some highlights, and if there are any questions, we'll open it up. Renee, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us to have the time to just talk to you guys. So as Gordon said, I'm Renee. I'm a senior managing consultant at Forvis, and we were hired to assess the cash disbursement cycle and processes within the accounting and finance team. And so the way we did that is we were able to get a copy of all the policies. We reviewed all of those. We did interviews, with the staff and with key stakeholders, just to see how things were being handled and processed against best practice. And so the key with best practice is there's best practice within the industries, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit as well. But the individual interpretation of those best practices definitely varies by organization. So as Gordon says, we were able to detail this out in detail with management and with the Finance Committee. And so I know that they're doing a lot of work at just looking at how to, we all have ways to be more efficient, more effective, and I know that that's what they're working on doing. So our report is set up with an overview. The client overview just talks about how we did our process, just some things that we saw throughout that. The next area is an overall assessment where we do a rating compared to very similar organizations or, similar size, similar type of work.
Renee?
Yes.
Can I put you on hold? Cody, can you bring up the PDF just so everybody knows which page we're on? And if you flip to next page. Okay, so that's I think the page prior to that is
that's our overview. Yes.
Overview, and then the next page is the overall assessment. So if you want to talk about that, or I'll just, Cody, can you flip the screen, next page? Okay, so anyway, so that's the overall assessment she's talking about.
Right.
Go ahead.
So this is where we're ranking things that we're seeing based on best practices in the industry. So if you'll go to the next page, it's the start of our detailed observations and recommendations. So you can see the way this is structured. We have the observation on the left-hand side, the recommendation of how to improve or what policies or procedures you could enact to be better at what you're doing, what priority level it is, and what time frame we think that this should be addressed in. We did address 13 observations within this. The 13 observations, I'm not like Gordon said, we're not going to go in the detail, but some of them were the use of credit cards for payment, automating the AP, the accounts payable system, security awareness training, especially around fraud, and like the approval process for payments are just some of the areas that we addressed. And then if you will skip down to probably page 12 or like 10 page, about 8 pages. Yep. There we go. This is just an easier like summary. It is the same 13 observations that we had with the same priority and range. But we know that there's a lot of people that like to see just summaries and then they can dig into the details. So we have provided that. And then the appendix is some projects we think you should focus on. And we've also given opportunities if you needed to have somebody come alongside you. Forvis is willing to assist with these type projects as well. So like I said, there were 13 observations. Our recommendations are based on best practice in the industries. So we do these type of assessments for not-for-profits and public sector organizations of all sizes. And we really look to our audit team as well for what are best practices. But those best practices, the specific details, so as you're getting into the recommendations, the specific details in the recommendations will need to be decided by the board, by management, because they do vary so differently on by organization. So with that, do you guys have any questions for me? It's pretty quick.
I don't know if everybody's had time to review. Are there any comments? Brent?
Please.
No questions, actually comments. I see a lot of these reports. This was really very, very helpful. It's organized. It allows you to go in and understand timeframes and risk and level of activities. The other thing, which is to me commendable, is that you get a report and then you want to know, well, does anything result as a response to the report? So I was pleased to see the staff report that said some of the things which were quickly actionable or easily done were taken care of and addressed. And I realized is that there's additional work yet to be done, but for getting it started from a quality improvement standpoint, I think it's an exemplary effort. So,
Agree. The one thing, the term she's been using is best practices, and as Renee explained, there's the textbook definition, and then there is what makes sense for mid-continent. And so if you think about how you stack these observations up, you'll have what we're currently doing, and in what I'll call the left column over here in the right column is what I'll call the best practices. They may not fit in a textbook fashion with mid-continent, so you come up with the mid-continent version of best practices, and then you have what I call the gap. And the gap is what creates your project schedule, and those have different timeframes. There are a couple of points in here that that were revealing. One was specifically was the number 2, where it was identified there were 2 large credit cards, one for 500,000, one for 750,000. That came to light, and management addressed those on the following day. So the one card I believe has been canceled, and the other one has been reduced to 10,000. Correct. So the rest of this is under review, and as I said, will evolve into a project schedule based on time, on necessity as well as just resources. So, but I think it's an excellent report and accomplished what we were after. So the next steps. Are there any questions or other comments?
I have a comment. Well, let me just say that I'm on the finance committee. I brought my copy from the actual committee meeting. If you look at it, you see it's really marked up in red and questions and everything. And this is an outstanding report these consultants prepared for us. So I'm very pleased with what they recommended, and I hope we do go for. I think it's on page 11, maybe, or 12.
11 and 12 that you mentioned. Was there are 13 recommendations, and I would hope we seriously start looking at those moving forward.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of what you said.
I just want us to move forward with your recommendations.
Oh, gotcha. And you know what? As somebody who loves this type of work, I worked for a local nonprofit for 16 years. I wish I would have had something like this. It makes me very happy when the recommendations are acted upon. So I am very thankful that it was helpful for you all.
Okay. Renee, thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you for
Yeah.
allowing me to zoom in tonight. I appreciate it.
I know you have plans, so thank you. And
Thank you very much.
okay, next item on the agenda is the disbursement. We had the finance committee met on February 9th. We went through the standard agenda of the financials and some of the items we're going to talk about tonight. There is on board docs a disbursement schedule. Cody, if you want to just bring that up. So this is taking a different shape. And again, there'll be some changes. There may be changes going forward, but there it is. And I think the first few pages are the purchasing cards. We're not going to go through these in detail, Cody, so you can just scroll down the pages. There's more explanation about what is there. Keep going. Keep going. I think we get to, and then, okay, stop there. And then the last, there's another section, which is the same format as you've seen in the past, which is the summary of payments by vendor for the month of January. And that again is in the category, the 4 categories: payroll, operating, capital, and materials. And then there's a summation at the end of those. I think it's about 4 pages. You'll see what the totals are right there. So total for the month of $5,729,804. So we're not going to go through that in detail, but if you have questions on it, relay those to Quan.
I have a question. I see some very small numbers on there, like $5.25. Is that actually a vendor or is that a customer?
Quan's question.
You have some very small amount, even under 10 cents. We have pre-authorization test run for some vendors who want to sign up for ACH.
I was just wondering if that was like customers, because
Oh,
for me, that would be a privacy issue, I think. But if it's vendors, that's, I don't know. Okay, thank you.
just there, what's happening with ACH is anymore, the one party will run a small stall transaction to the other account to confirm it, and then the owner of that account has to confirm that that transaction hit. So it's just it's a validation to what it's from. Okay, personnel schedule, I believe, is the next page. I don't know how you have this set up, Kobe. And this is the same format as in the past. It's broken down by the departments. Aaron, did we need to go through this, or is this just information again?
You can read at your leisure.
And we started this just to facilitate the information going into the budgeting process. Obviously, we're coming up on that project at the end of this month and going into March. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the dashboard review, which is, this is follow-up to things that we've been talking about in past meetings. And on board docs, you will see some PDFs as well as an Excel file. I had the PDFs printed. Those are, I think, in a little stapled packet you have. I also included, just for reference, the 2 pages that were presented in January. One is the expenditure summary, which is as of November 30, 22. And then the funding sources was as of December 31st, 2022. Those have not been updated. The expenditures in December were a little over 2.1 million. The January expenditures were a little over 1.7 million. So about 3.8 plus million between the 2 months. And again, that schedule, those schedules have not been updated. So I'm not going to go through those again. The PDFs, Cody, you want to bring up the Excel file? You have in front of you the some PDF pages that were printed out that are on Word docs. Everybody has that in front of them. Looks like this. So what I asked for, what I requested staff was the file, the Excel file that was used for the March 14th, 2022 schedule that was on Word docs. On Word docs, it is a PDF on that date. That is also, I think, this legal size document that was printed out. So you have 2 pages. You have this page and the front page of your staple packet are the same. So the only issue with this is that you're going to see that it's not I don't think the actual file, it was the one that staff was able to locate in older records that looked like it was applicable to that date. So Cody, if you just, if you do a print preview on that screen, just go up to print. I'm sorry, go up to there. Thank you.
There we are.
So that looks well, actually that's the first tab of the screen. So what I've done is put in some comments. You'll see in the blue boxes on this tab, and you can go back out of this now, Cody. Just go back to the file. So, and what I was trying to do is just understand how the numbers were presented, and this tab of this file, which is on your printout on the bottom left, you'll see tab 2002-1R2, which is the tab on the file there on the screen, and you'll see where the columns look like what was on the March 14th board docs or dashboard that was presented to the board. The problem is the black highlight cells over in what are column M, and I made a note there. There's nothing in there, okay, even though there were numbers in here. So I don't have the final official file. This is the closest one they could locate, okay? So what I want to do, and then the other thing I want to point out on that column while I'm there, is that the 66,278 code, if you want to click on that cell, just click on that cell, the 66,000 or 66 million. That is coming from the summary tab. In fact, all these numbers, for the most part, come from the summary tab. The cells up in column M that don't have any amounts in them pull off the work package tabs. I don't know what happened to the links, but the numbers aren't there. So the one thing I noticed after the fact, if Cody, if you will unhide columns, go ahead and just slide over and just hit unhide. You will see that there are some other columns in this worksheet that were hidden. One is the original 2014 plan, and the other one is the 2017 plan with a column that's labeled Delta. So I'm not going to go through that, but the numbers from the previous budget, at least the budget documents that were put together, are there. If you will then go to the summary tab, and you'll see some highlights. The brown highlights are the details that go into that cell total of 84.5 million. Cody, if you will click on that and hit the F2 column or F2 cell or F2 key, sorry, you're going to see that there are 8 different numbers that are subtracted from that. And I'm going to go through that. If you'll just go ahead, get off that and click on the next cell total, which is column K. Now the 0, hit F2. You will see that there are the same deductions in that cell total that there were in column J. And then I want you to go up to cell, I believe it is K, what are my notes here? J16, I think. J16 is hard input. That doesn't come from any work paper tab. Then go to the cell immediately to the right, to that 321, and hit F2 on that. And you're going to see that that cell formula, unlike the others in that column, adds back what's in column N, 750,000. So the delta that's presented is not the difference between the 2 columns. It was adjusted. And so you can get out of that, Cody, and I want you to scroll down to the bottom where I have the highlight. Again, on your page here, you'll see that I've shown you what the cell, what the numbers in that column total to, and you'll see the numbers that were subtracted to get to what is presented as 84.5 million. 84.5 million is the budget number that has been in the budget book for, it was in the most recent one, and I think the last 3 years as well. So this, the numbers you're seeing are a calculation that's different than what I'll call the basic math of the worksheet. Right, the last tab I'm going to give you in the last printout, if Cody, if you go down and to the, again, if you'll go to the arrows on the left of the bottom bar, right click and scroll down to the cost tab. And if you'll scroll down, you'll, again, I've printed this page. Oops, just go back up. You'll see in that, go back up. Thank you. There we go. So what I've highlighted over in the box, the amounts that are deducted, those are actually the cell references in the formula that's used to get to the 84.5 million. You'll see that there are multiple components. Back on the summary tab, I just laid out the actual numbers that show you how that calculation was done. And again, the total is, if you recall, this is what I identified in around the 1st of June, was close to 92 million. The total that was presented was 84.5 million. And so this is just giving you the information that shows you how that 84 million was derived. Any comments or questions? I don't know who calls you, Ron or me.
We're going to discuss this page.
Which one?
It's the propositional capital summary page of expenditures.
We did that last month.
Okay.
I just included it again for information only.
So because its numbers appear to be elusive, I just want to get it clear in my mind. If you're agreed upon amount that there's a net cash deficiency of 11.5 million. That's this number down here. This is the last page of your packet.
Yeah, you're on, yes, on the expenditure summary. Yes, the cash deficiency was shown at 11.5. Again, this is based on the projected costs, and it includes Riverside.
Okay.
And then the box below that talks about the Natixis interest of 3.7, which was included in the capital fund.
Okay.
And that those funds were spent. Okay.
Okay.
So you get to a deficiency if you include Natixis of 7.8 million.
So 7.8 is the number I should keep in my mind as the challenge of how it is that we construct a new budget. Or it's a way to think about it.
One way to think about it, if you remember, we went through the cash flow analysis last month as well. And again, I'm trying not to repeat everything, but if you remember, our cash flow cycle is such that at the end of November, we hit the basement, okay, and then revenues start coming in. That has to be addressed to avoid that shortfall, because we technically will be out of money. We'll be out of money absent selling the bonds in the capital fund, and with interest rates now, short-term rates are north of 5%, and the 10-year just popped up to 4% today. Short of selling those for a $2 million loss, we have to deal with the timing of this.
So I realize that we're having a budget workshop on Thursday, and this is another place and time to kind of talk about this in greater detail. But I just wanted to make sure that this was not a new number, but it's the best number that we have that we can work from or work off of.
Right, and I would like staff to keep this updated, so we don't have any more surprises in terms of where we stand. Because I can't tell you this number is good as of today. It's the best we have at this point.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for clarification. You said that this 5 million that this efficiency here includes Riverside. At what dollar amount?
I think Riverside is in total 7 point, I don't know.
This
Oh, it's right there,
7603
right
here.
there, it's right there.
Okay,
Yes.
I just would like to note that in the capital plan, Riverside was just included as a remodel, and it was just a placeholder number. So Riverside was effectively taken out of the plan except for that placeholder number. So I'm just stating that as fact, as we look at this 7.8, it pretty much is the cost of Riverside. Just from the way I look at it.
And we should have a solid number on Riverside in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and so we can see if it's higher than that or lower than that. And so we can and should update this when that number is available, predicated on the fact that the board approves the Riverside project.
Yeah, as I said, I think we need to keep close tabs on this going forward and keep it updated, ideally updated every month. Any other questions on this? Okay, then I'm going to move to the next item, which is the PropL review scoping expert. As you recall from last meeting, we approved the hiring of an expert to do the scoping work. There were 3 options that were identified. One was CFO Systems, second was Forbes, and the third was Hood, who is our current auditor. Forbes did some internal checks and withdrew because of conflicts, and Hood was not considered an option because they are the current auditor, and there were no other alternatives that were presented by anyone or management. So that's where we kind of defaulted to CFO Systems, who, as if you know, previous meeting and stated their qualifications. So the motion from the Finance Committee is to proceed with CFO Systems. The engagement letter is very short. And it's basically the wording that's in the motion, which is to engage the motion to The board is to engage CFO Systems to define the scope and framework of the Propel capital plan review. Such result to be used in the RFQ for the expanded and more detailed review of Propel expenditures and the total professional fees and expenses for the scoping engagement limited to no more than $8,000.
And that's your motion.
That's the motion.
Second,
I'll second.
it's been moved and seconded. We approve the resolution as presented on the screen. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
I see the language there, but I think the committee also approved a confidentiality non-disclosure agreement in the motion, the original motion from the committee.
That was subject to legal review, and the advice of legal is that we table that one, that NDA.
Well, I would agree with that, but so what are we, is this all we're voting on tonight, or?
Yes.
Or do you have, when you say table?
Well, okay, so the NDA, because you're under Missouri statutes, sunshine issues, and the public entity, you cannot restrict documents, agreements, or whatever the case is. So I asked CFO Systems, I said I would like you to pull that, and that can be dealt with on the next phase, whoever is selected for the next phase. There are some confidentiality provisions that are probably applicable. The standard NDA is too restrictive. And for this engagement, I don't, it was deemed that it really wasn't necessary, but so they pulled it off the table.
But that's my question. That's all. I guess what I'm saying is I would assume that anything that comes out of committee goes to the full board at their next meeting. And any changes to that will be done by the board through amendments or substitutes or whatever. So I guess, and I don't like the NDA. Let me just make it clear on that. But
I don't recall that we approved the NDNA. I thought we approved the motion to proceed with CFO.
what did we?
The motion that was approved by the committee is the motion is the same as this, except it said subject to legal review.
I can tell you.
The NDNA was not, the NDA was on board docs, but it was not a part of the motion.
Well, I thought it was part of the motion, and I don't, again, I was going to talk about that tonight. This is a terrible part of the language, but if it's going to be taken off, then I'm certainly happy. But I want to know the process by which we're taking it off. But I guess it depends on what we actually voted out of committee.
This was the exact motion out of committee. I think the one you're referring to is from the January board meeting, and there was a subject to legal review at the end of that. But this is the exact motion from the finance committee.
At this point in time, there is not a disclosure agreement before us.
Correct.
Oh, I certainly agree with that. That's all.
Other discussion? Comments? Oh, Michael. I'm sorry, Brett.
I'll respond to most things.
That's okay.
I looked at the Forbes report and recommendation number 11 says this is something that we should do and says that it's high and says that we should do it in the short term. I was hopeful, frankly, that Forbes might be considered as a vendor, on this to do the work because they'd already had done some work and had some grounding in it, but for reasons that they took themselves out of, thanks for that explanation. Because, I looked at, their offer on page 14, subject to a further review. My primary concern, as always, have sort of supported this, but my concern at the moment is that this can be an extensive activity. And given the development of a new budget that we have coming up, and it's really important that we get this budget right. And we struggled with budgeting as staff and as a board last year, such that we voted on budgets different times. And in some senses, we weren't clear as a board about where we were on a budget. My concern is that if this activity is approved by the board, is that it occurs in such a manner, in such a time that it doesn't interfere with the ongoing budget activity, which are certain statutory requirements. There isn't a statutory requirement for us to do this at this particular time. There is a statutory requirement that we have a budget, approved by a certain sort of day. So given the potential level of detail, We can be informed by what it is that we learned, but we're not undertaking significant capital projects in, years to come. And then their staff recommendations. I know that this is my last comment here, that staff says on number 11 says a multi-year capital budget will be developed and presented to the board in 23 and 24. So if staff has a limited amount of time to work on financial matters, my hope is that they would concentrate their efforts on the budget that we have for the years in front of us and set aside for the moment activity that has occurred in years past that in some senses, for whatever considerations or whatever should have been done, can't be unwound at this point.
I think the timing is the timing of this is to be determined. Again, this is the scoping project, so I don't know the turnaround. My guess is it's probably 30 to 45 days. At that point, then the RFQ is distributed to parties. That's another 30 days to respond. And then you get into the scheduling issues. I think we're probably past the budget cycle when we
I think it takes care of itself.
I think it does. And I personally think this is a really critical project because, as I've explained here previously, what was presented to the board had calculations in it that I would say are not what I'm accustomed to seeing. And when numbers are presented in that fashion, it raises a question in my mind. I don't know what else is out there. That's the purpose of this review. And I think we owe it to the public. It's owed to the board and to the public to say that these, regardless whether the monies are already spent, have they been spent appropriately in accordance with standard practices for the construction industry. Again, the review, I don't know what the review process was. I can tell from looking at this that if nobody looked at, if there probably was limited review in most of the disbursements, that raises a concern, as you're well aware. So I think this is a crucial engagement that we should not just put off to when it's convenient for staff to do it. And really, staff is just going to provide documents. This is less like what I'll call a financial statement audit, or that consumes a fair amount of time. I'll stand corrected if that's not the case, but I think this is where a lot of documents are turned over to the professionals, and they'll dig in and ask questions after that.
I want to comment. I mean, I do. I'm a reader. Page 10 tells us number 11 is that it's high and that it's short term. The other part, I'm a little concerned. Actually, I raised this at the last board meeting. I don't know whether this was addressed in the finance committee. Does the party who writes the RFQ prohibit it from engaging in the work that comes out of it all? Because the way this works, if you're a clever person, you write it such as that you get the work on your side because you're the only, it's written in such a way that you're the only qualified firm. So I would hope that it was written in such a way as that other parties with more time and that it's posted might surface other people that might be able to come in and bid on the work. There's not an exclusivity.
Let me just restate what this is: an agreed upon procedures report, okay, or project. It's not an audit, which when you think of a financial statement audit, if this was the financial statement, you tell them, okay, do your audit, and when you're done, give us an opinion. Okay, that's not what this is. This in an agreed upon procedures, they're going to be very deliberate and say, these are the types of things we want reviewed. And that will allow those who want to respond, put some time frame around it. So I don't have fee ranges running from 30,000 to 300,000. And that's what happened. That was my fear had we just thrown this thing out into the market.
No, but I want my concern to be acknowledged. They're going to go do this thing, and then we're going to come back and have an open process where other people can engage.
Well, and again, I think the intent is that we will take their product And if we need to make revisions, we'll make them, and that will go into the final RFQ. We're not saying that we're going to stand back and just let them run and have say-so over what the procedures are going to be. So the audit committee will still have the ability, and the board will still have the ability to say, we don't like this one, or we can add that one. But again, we need to, I think the board needs to stand back and let the professionals do the job of review. Because again, we're not construction experts.
Yeah. And I'm saying something a little bit narrower and a little bit more specific. Because they write it doesn't mean that they're the presumptive entity to go do the work as they wrote it up.
I don't think that'll be the case. And that's right. That's why I say agreed upon procedures is very specific. Do X, Y, and Z. And that way they can scope how many hours.
Okay, thank you.
And three things. One is I think, and I had the same concern as Brad, that we're not basically just handing out this to somebody we know. And I mentioned that in the last meeting. Also, I'm not entirely convinced that the concerns I had last meeting are addressed, which is a deliberate making sure there's an objectivity and total non-connectedness associated with it. My third point is a little more just specific, and from reading over the agreement, it needs to be signed by a board president, not by the chair of the committee.
Other discussion, comments?
I appreciate the discussion. So.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution as on the screen. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Roll call.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure.
This is over
Mr.
contract.
Devine?
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Shondelmeyer,
Aye.
Ms. Wykoff,
Aye.
Ms. Weiss. Aye. Ms. Lemunion,
Aye. Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Sorry about that. I was on delay. Sorry about that. Mr. Thies,
Yes.
Dr. Pandolfi,
Yes.
Mr. Lazio,
Yes, aye.
Dr. Wilson, Mr. Cook,
Aye.
Ms. Virgo,
I, along with the caveats that I mentioned.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and Ms. Depp. She's still not on the phone, right, Cody?
No, she's not, Teresa.
Okay, we have a quorum. Yes.
And there is finance other.
Yeah, the only thing, we talked about budget timing, but Aaron's going to discuss that in his report. So that was it for finance committee.
Okay, thank you for your report. Now we have a treat, fundraising development committee.
Anything you'd like to say, Michael? Well, this is a new piece for the board. So Michael and I haven't had a chance to meet yet to sort of discuss where we're at with fundraising and where our work is focused. But we did put together a 2-page report. Some people like stats, some people like stories. So we tried to combine a little bit of both in this 2-page report. Cody, I don't know if you have that in the presentation.
Yes, Diana, are you talking about
The
this
actual
one?
yeah, so this is just a quick snapshot of where we are in our fiscal year to date with private fundraising. So this is anything that comes in through a major gift or a grant or an event or a membership revenue or online fundraising or mailings. Those are really the ways that we raise private dollars. So this would be since last July, kind of our total amounts received, our number of donors. I won't walk through every single number because it's all in Word docs for you to see. And also what our charitable account balances are. So we have funds at Central Bank, we have funds at Truman Cartman Community Foundation, we have one fund at UMB. So that just is our most recent as of the end of January, where our charitable balances were. So happy to answer any questions about that. Cody, can you go to the next page? So for the second page of the report, we try to focus on one area that we work in. And February happens to be National Library Lovers Month. And we also have a program coincidentally called Library Lovers. And so just wanted to share a little bit with you about that. We currently have 100 members in Library Lovers, and that goes all the way from birth to any age. So we have a children's level that can join, we have teens, and then adult levels. So we really want to make sure that we're kind of including everybody in this. And so in October, we had a Milk and Cookies event. We featured a local author from Liberty High School, Brian Gerline, who wrote a children's book. And so we had lots of kiddos come out, and he read his book to them, and we did a story walk of his book as well, which was really fun. And then we do a holiday event for our library lovers. And so December, we did that at Woodneath. We had a performance of Gift of the Magi for our members. And then we had a craft time with book pages, which was really fun and more challenging than you would think to make a snowflake out of a book page. So, you know, but a fun way to kind of engage with folks outside of their regular interactions with libraries. And up above, you see some of the impact numbers that Library Lovers have helped us to achieve. And you're welcome to take a look at that. And you probably saw in the first slide, Cody there was a YouTube video link. And because it's National Library Lovers Month, if you have 7 minutes of time to go and watch this video, we actually a couple of years ago brought a camera into the North Independence branch and just invited anyone who wanted to come and talk about why they loved their library to do that. So we didn't recruit folks. We just invited them to come and talk in front of the camera. And so it's a really touching, I think it's a touching video. Two stories that really stand out is a mother and her son. He is autistic, didn't speak until he was 6, but then joined the summer reading program and read 26 books his first year, which is super cool. And then another elderly gentleman who said for 16 years he had visited the library for 4 to 5 days a week, every week. And so the staff were really more like family to him. So interesting, the theme that we kept seeing coming up through those interviews was how the library is a place of connection for people, you know, and just a really important way for them to engage with the community in a healthy and safe place. So if you have time to watch it, because it's National Library Lovers Month, please do. You have a pamphlet in front of you that talks a little bit about the program. So if you have any questions about it, let me know. Does that kind of?
2 questions.
Sure.
One, how does one become a library lover? And 2, have any local celebrities or notable people joined in the past week or 2?
Joined in the past week or 2? Well, you have. So, thank you.
The invitation is there to all of you as well, if you're not already.
It's a great way to support the library. I mean, the levels are as low as $10 a year. We'd love to have 100% participation among our board. And you get a fun little Christmas ornament, as many of you saw at Christmas that we handed out. We do have an event coming up on Saturday. We do quarterly book clubs with our library lovers to kind of showcase our new spaces for these folks. So we'll be watching the movie Austin Land at Woodneath, if any of you are interested. It is from 2 to 5:30. We'll be doing a tour of the auditorium at Woodneath and then watching the movie and having some popcorn and soda. And it's just it's a great group of people. And one of the things that we've done is engage them at the library lovers level, but then they've become sponsors of the legacy luncheon tables, or they've given major gifts. And so it's a good way to kind of get people interested in what's happening, give them kind of some behind the scenes look at what the library does, and then that tends to grow their gifts. So
Also,
yes,
the yummy way is, and I don't mean yummy in terms of delicious. You can still purchase Library Lovers coffee at the rotisserie.
You can. It's a little harder to find now. Their cost blends are a little harder to find because they're using a third-party company now to sell them. But we do have a Library Lovers blend, which actually we get a certain amount of proceeds that support our summer reading endowment. So you know, if you enjoy
Not the
coffee.
library blend, because it's Kansas City Public, but the library lovers.
We were there first. I just have to say, we had a blend first. So, yeah, but we try to find all kinds of creative ways to support the library system and the needs that staff have. And so Amazon Smile is another way, but unfortunately they're retiring that program. So we'll be looking at other ways to kind of expand, but happy to come back and talk to the board about any of these different areas that we're. Any other questions?
Just a comment, I've had the coffee, it's really good, so if you like coffee,
It's
library lovers,
it's really good.
go get it.
I'm not a coffee drinker, so I tell people it's good.
I've had it, it's good.
Okay, I give it to people at Christmas, so I hope it's good.
Yes.
Yeah, one other thing I would mention too is we have our legacy luncheon date scheduled. So if you would save the date on your calendars, it is Friday, July 14th, 11:45 to 1:15. It'll be at MGC. And our author this year is David Bondrelli, who's a local journalist, and he is releasing a new book called The Book of Charlie. So we're really looking forward to having that event, and we would love for you all to be there.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'd like to make a comment. If anybody's not yet a member of Library Lovers, I think it's great. I would strongly encourage everybody to consider that. The Legacy Luncheon also is, they just do a fantastic job. And the reason we're so fortunate to have Anna and Michael address this is that it seems that for the most part, we have absolutely essential macro level models, Jim and Katina before, and statistics. But those numbers are composed by families and individuals. And those are sometimes young moms bringing their kids in. A lot of times single moms bringing their kids to story centers. There's a personal dimension that we have. Of course, in 2016, the dimension was on voters. And in 2017, it was on us as taxpayers. The third dimension, of course, is the users. And I think what you're presenting allows us to focus the human effect. One particularly hit me was that in a recent publication, there's a picture of a little kid, a newborn. And next to it is a picture of the little kid as a 5 or 6 year old maybe. And the story of the little kid being brought to the library literally from the time the child was not yet walking. And I think that's the kind of stuff that shows that where the money goes besides just steel and parking lots and computers. It truly affects in meaningful, good ways our voters, our taxpayers, and our users. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Questions, comments?
I would like to say thank you to Michael for taking on the the fundraising committee.
Diana's the pro. I'm not taking credit for it.
We haven't had a chair for a while, so thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Building committee. Chris?
This will be exceptionally brief. There are photographs and board docs that show North Oak and Green Valley and construction underway. So look at them as you might choose. There is an important building committee meeting. This is the announcement, but it's March 2nd. Several different items, but Riverside, the guaranteed maximum price is an important one for all board members. It's a public meeting and all are welcome, and the public, it's a public meeting. This is the last major capital project in our Proposition L funded campaign. I think I have this right, staff will correct me. There is a plan groundbreaking for East Independence on March 31st, I think at 9 a.m. And so I'm sure staff will get you notes out about it, but I think it's good when board members show up to these, groundbreakings. And this will be a new service library location and to add it with East Lee Summit. There's another one that was developed during that. So that's the building committee report. I think if board members have questions about any project, I think staff are here can answer them, but I think that would be it for the building committee.
Questions?
I want to note that's the shortest building committee report that's ever been given.
No, that's right. Thank you. Okay, personnel.
I didn't put this on the agenda.
Pardon?
I didn't have,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if she knew that Ron has suggested that all.
If there's no report, that's fine. No,
oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
that's
So-
good.
The personnel committee has nothing to say.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
and same thing for tech, any report? That's fine. Okay, no report. Librarians report.
All right, okay, so thank you. Cody, could you bring up okay, well, there we go. We'll start with that. So on Thursday at 12 o'clock at the Woodneath Center, we will be having our first of two ad hoc budget committee meetings. The purpose of these meetings are to create a more collaborative and transparent approach to budget development. So the executive committee and committee chairs will meet with staff and we will talk about a handful of very important items. Our priorities, the budget process, and come up with a rough planning calendar. And we'll get feedback from committee chairs on where our priorities lie for the upcoming year. And with all the financial issues that were brought up earlier, I think as a group, we can work together to figuring out, where we should focus on in the budget planning process. So this is a first step along the way, but I think it's a great way to start as a group and then reconvene later on in the few months' time. So happy to have everyone there. And it is an open session, but looking forward to seeing everyone and kind of talking about the things that are very important to us. All right, next slide. Do you have those beautiful slides that were prepared? Very good. So we wanted to take a minute to recognize our staff. And the next slide honors two very wonderful people that work for us who've been with us for 20 years now. And so we have Alexandra Dunau. She's the branch manager at Raytown. Nope, excuse me. I'm jumping up to my favorite city. We have Mary Barillo. Yeah, interesting story. So she joined us in 2003 after a career working for TWA. She's been a page at the Platte City Boardwalk branches and currently serves at the Green Hills Library Center. Her manager, Becky, had this to say about her. Mary is one of the people that I refer to as a branch national treasure. So thank you, Mary, for your 20 years of service. And next we have Jeff Donaldson. He joined us again in 2003. He's been serving the public at the Grandview branch since 2007, where he's a technology associate. His manager, Sam, says this: he has incredible skills, institutional knowledge, and teamwork to Grandview. He's also willing to jump in and help anyone in need. So Mary and Jeff, thank you for your 20 years of service. Next slide, and this is the award I referenced earlier, and this is very exciting. So Brianna Shuaib, she's a Youth Services Associate at Blue Ridge, and she's been selected as one of the first 5 recipients to be awarded the Jason Reynolds Simon Schuster Travel Grant. This grant is awarded to librarians across the country to cover the cost of attending the ALA annual conference. So she's thrilled to be able to do this. And just a quick note for those of you who aren't familiar with who Jason Reynolds is. He's a prolific YA author, a New York Times bestseller. 2 of my favorite books are Long Way Down and As Brave as You. And I've also had the pleasure of meeting and working with him in my former job in Cleveland. He's the recipient of the Newbery Honor, Pritzker Honor, NAACP Image Award, and multiple Coretta Scott King honors. He's a magnificent author, and we're really happy that Ms. Shuaib gets to attend the ALA annual conference. And the last slide. Okay, we got 2 new branch managers. This is very exciting. So now we have Alexandra Dunau. She's now the new manager of the Raytown branch. She's worked for MCPL since 2020 as the assistant manager in the technical services department. And prior to that, she worked for 18 years at the Nazarene Theological Seminary. So congratulations, Alexandra. And then we have Sierra Kelly, and she will be the new branch manager at Blue Springs North Branch. She's been with us since 2022 and was a tech associate at Raytown. Prior to that, she worked at University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Denver Public Library and Tattered Covered Bookstore. Sierra will always stick in my mind because on my first week at the library, I got this most magnificent letter from a community member about how her work really made a difference in this person's life. And I believe that letter is attached to board docs, yes, and you can read it at your leisure. So this letter was coupled with a letter that was not so wonderful. And I was kind of down. I think it was my second day on the job. So I said, I'm going to call Jeannie and see what she has to say. And she said, Sierra's magnificent, and I believe she's destined for great things. And Jeannie clearly is a very perceptive woman. And now Sierra will be a branch manager at Blue Springs North Branch. So congratulations there. And the last thing I just wanted to say is we all had a wonderful time at Legislative Day. We both voiced our support for the Secretary of State's request for funding for public libraries. And we had some really magnificent conversations. If I had probably the best bookends a person could ask for. I met with Jerome Barnes, who represents my district. It covers Raytown. And I ended my day with Representative Jeff Coleman, who I believe Green Valley, is that it?
Yeah, it's Blue North right now.
Yeah, Blue North. But both conversations were magnificent, and both representatives voiced their support for the library and all that we do. And so it was just a wonderful day, and I want to thank the staff for being there with me and kind of guiding me through the process. And special thanks to my road dog here, Trustee Johnson. We rode up together. But really, it was a great day, and I would extend the opportunity to all of you if you want to join us next year. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. New business. Any? Announcements. I believe we have available the calendar. If not, I have some available also too. And trustees' comments. Any? Trustees' comments?
Please, one, on the 31st, I may not be available. I have a medical procedure on my knee. I played too much pickleball on the 24th, and it's a scoping. This is why the term scoping bothers me when I read the second knee with scoping discus issues. And so my point is, if I'll second that, I don't know about if I'll be out of the house by the 31st.
We'll take pictures.
I can read, but yes, that's if I don't back out of the surgery. That's obviously that's yours.
The comments.
Aaron failed to acknowledge, actually, I was down there in Jefferson City also, and no, that's not my comment. My comment is people recognize Bob Johnson. And they said, oh my gosh, there's Senator Johnson. And he was like a personality within the room, and people who have longstanding in the Missouri Library Association lobbyist. And so sometimes we don't acknowledge the breadth of somebody's public service and what it is that they've done, and people will see that and know that. And so we were well served to have him by there, because he also got a favorite parking spot that made the day a lot easier to accommodate. So.
Comments, others? Just Mark, following up, if we have the conversation, the selection of the people who gave the previous benedictions was a bit of laziness.
Gave what?
The benedictions, the previous meetings, a bit of laziness on my part, as we had two ordained ministers here, so I thought I'd just happen to them. But I have reached out to Catholic priests, of course, rabbis and imams, and the feedback yet has been sparse, but we'll see what happens. But also, as was done today for like a non-religious, but more of a reflection, was I commented on the Urban Library Council, purely secular, but I think has goals and aspirations that I think are, I found them to be, again, not of a religious nature, but inspiring for what the libraries can do beyond the, the numbers and the statistics that we do have. But I do take your comment to heart very much. And I did check research, the scope of what can be presented. And the recent Supreme Court decisions are fairly open, as long as it doesn't get to the point of being purely proselytizing. That's not going to happen at all, period. It's not going to happen. But, and I also did ask for legal counsel confirmation of what we're doing. So I
appreciate your comments.
Yeah, no, this was thought out ahead of time, and it gets to the point that if any member of the the library community, the library family is uncomfortable with it, I really would like you to share that with me, or anybody too, for anybody else on YouTube.
I guess, I mean, I understand, I was just looking at the Supreme Court decision as well, and it's just as if it were to reflect policies that are promoted within the library. And so I go back to something that really impacted me, newspaper articles of quotes by trustees. It still sticks in my craw, frankly. And they would fall under fundamentalist policies. And so I guess that's where, if the presentation in here of a prayer or whatever reflects greater, that would be my concern.
Okay, and it's certainly well noted. I appreciate it, Mark.
I move we adjourn.
Second the motion.
Another.
Any other trustees' comments
There's another.
besides the?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. another-
Ron, I think you had one.
I have one.
We got it covered. Oh, okay.
Oh, you got that covered. Okay.
That was addressed in the finance.
Okay. Someone online had one.
Michelle wants.
Michelle?
I was just gonna say, my son came home from college and for the, I guess for the Super Bowl, and we needed to get him his passport renewed. And the only place I could get it done while he was home was over at Blue Springs. They had an appointment, and I greatly appreciate that service that MCPL has now. If you need your passport renewed, highly recommend getting online, making yourself an appointment. It was very painless, very nice. I really appreciated it.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
I think the last comment was the last one, but we have a second last one. I really appreciate having the presentations on pictures and the comments about the employees. With the exception of these meetings, the only employees I know are basically, except for Michael at Antioch, is the ones here in headquarters. I really, really appreciate getting to know. And the employee base is absolutely terrific. I know the buildings are beautiful, expensive and neat, but they're worthless without the people running them.
That's right.
Thank you. I think we had a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.